Since 1906, successive measurements of the speed of light seem to imply that it's incrementally going slightly faster. The set of data points is drifting slightly across the thing. Well, now, how, if it's at the limits of the instrumentality, can you possibly explain that? Well, this became such an issue in the astrophysics community, and check this out, that what they did is in 1972, they defined the speed of light. and they said, this is the speed of light. And all future calculations should use this number regardless of what the instruments are telling you. A momentous turning point in the evolution of scientific thought. At last, nature itself is deemed no longer necessary for the study of nature, and in fact, it just gets in the way. Anyway, I can go on at great length about the foibles of science, but it's just fun to rib them. Yeah.
We're back to scholasticism, I guess. But by the same argument, couldn't you say how long is a year, especially when you're talking about births of universes in which Earths revolving around suns haven't yet evolved to measure the year, that we're now measuring the whole schmear in?
Well, you mean why... I'm not sure I understand you. Do you mean why do we place so much emphasis on the year count in the theory?
Well, how can you, in a way, because...
Well, it doesn't, really. What it depends on is a 384-day cycle, and which, if you were to press me, and I guess you are, as to why is it a 384-day cycle, well, it's 13 lunations, yes, but there's something mysterious going on there, and probably a good Newtonian could explain it to us. They do these studies, these geochronological studies using coral fossils, and they believe that the year length, that the year is slowly shrinking, and that about a billion years ago, the year length would have been about 384 days. And I suspect that the evolution of DNA, that there must have been, that the fact that the DNA runs on 64 and the I Ching runs on 64, and this number 384 keeps coming up in relationship to the lunation and the possible solar year length, I think that essentially the DNA must have frozen in itself a kind of picture of the various orbital and geomagnetic resonances that existed in the solar system or in the terrestrial environment at the time it came into existence. I mean, that's just my guess, but it would fit. Do you see what I mean? And then the fact that it's 13 lunations, the moon is despun, tidally despun. That's why we always see one face locked on the Earth, because it makes one revolution in the time that it makes one orbit. And that's the consequence of that. And it may be that... well, I'm not sure what I'm trying to say, but that there was a coupling of some sort between the Sun-Earth-Moon system a billion years ago that made a 384-day year possible.
But my point is, before that, when we're talking about the time between
I see what you're
the
asking.
Big Bang and planets, how long is a year?
Oh, well, my assumption is that the real formative cycles are quantum mechanical in dimension. In other words, we talk about a 384-day cycle, then we talk about a 6-day cycle, then an hour and 35-minute cycle, and then a minute and a half or something. But it's the cycles below, say, 10 to the minus 12 seconds. In other words, the whole universe, I assume, is some kind of amplification of quantum mechanical instability. And you and I have talked about how biology seems to be a chemical strategy for amplifying quantum mechanical indeterminacy so that it leaves the subatomic realm and can be present, in a 145-pound block of meat. That is what it is. The phenomenon of free will is quantum mechanically amplified determinacy in this complex chemical system that we call organic life. So the year thing isn't important. What's important is probably something down in the realm of Planck's constant, some slip in the cosmic machinery at a very basic level that was then exploded and amplified out into the phenomenal universe. The real question is why there is anything at all. Why this state was preferred over a state of pure nothingness, which would appear to be the bottom of the energy well. Yeah.
You've done a lot of thinking about morphological resonances of different sorts, and there's one that I've encountered that I really can't shake loose. I wonder if you have a comment on it. Reading about the brain, the estimates of the total number of neurons is about 100 billion. And as you read about cosmology, you read that the average spiral galaxy is thought to have 100 billion suns in it, and the total number of galaxies in the universe is estimated to be around 100 billion. And I recently encountered the estimate that the total number of biomolecules in a cell is about 100 billion. And it seems like this coincidence keeps coming up, and maybe it's related to Paul Dirac's idea of the large number.
Well, I think it is true that emergent properties come out of large aggregations. Always the textbook example is, if you have two H2O molecules, that's water, but you don't have wetness. Wetness doesn't emerge until you have thousands of H2O molecules. And so the wetness of water is a property which only emerges when you have millions of these molecules together. And it does appear that complex neural nets have to be above 9 billion operating subunits. And so, it may be that, definitely we are pushing toward criticality in any area of measurement. For example, if you look at the curve of energy release, or the population curve, or the curve of information production, or the curve of advancing velocity, you see that many of these curves will become asymptotic in the near future. And that's what I mean when I say we're headed into this domain of boundary dissolution and hyper-novel inflationary evolution, you could almost call it. Yeah.
Asymptotic.
Isn't that, asymptotic is when it's not doubling every time you measure it. It's being squared, isn't that it, each time? Mm-hmm. So it goes logarithmic, asymptotic, and then there's another term for an even more rapid expansion. Yeah.
When I read futurist books on futurists, I've been to several things like that, they talk very similar to what you're saying, the radical changes that are coming, but they're looking at all the denominators of what they feel would cause this. And their sense of chaos is what you're talking about in a different way. Economic chaos, health chaos. Our earth is heading for a tremendous upheaval in the cities, the concentration
right.
of so many people together in these megalithic centers of humanity, and are so disconnected with what man is, that they're saying the same thing that you're saying in a different way. They are saying the same thing. Mm-hmm.
Yes, well, as you see, they feel that they own the planet, and so they're very alarmed. Wouldn't you be if it were your property? and you say, my God, what is going on? We have to get hold of the neighborhood. But my faith is that the horse knows where it wants to go, and we're all being carried along for the ride. And, you know, Mitsubishi, the Catholic Church, whoever wants to try and control it is welcome to try. But it's a perverse thing. I mean, we who think of ourselves as little people imagine that owning the earth must be a great pleasure. But actually, you know, the number of ulcer tablets being consumed in the chancelleries, bourses, and embassies of this planet seems to argue that thinking you own the world is an enormous headache and aggravation. The chaos is roving through the system and able to undo at any point the best laid plans. All kinds of things are happening. First of all, there are all these fields of research ranging from cryogenic